With the departure of Joe Burrow, college football is on the hunt for the next best player in 2020. We'll sit down with Devonair D. Jackson to discuss who we believe will be each offensive MVP. All this and more coming up next on Heisman Talk. With college football on the brink of being canceled, many conferences are switching to in-conference play. With that being said, there's a lot of questions to be answered. Will there be a Heisman Trophy winner? Will there be a college football playoff? Well, today we're going to discuss the MVPs that we believe will be in each conference. And joining me, my friend and colleague, Heisman Insight Analyst, Devonair D. Jackson. D, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Nate. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me on.
Talking about the Pac-12 with Herbert's departure, it kind of leaves the floodgate wide open for the Pac-12. Who do you have coming in this year and becoming that next dynamic player?
Man, I think I'm going to shock a lot of people with this one. A lot of people wouldn't suspect an offensive lineman, to be an MVP, but this guy Pinesewell, he's a left tackle for Oregon. He blocked for Justin Herbert last year. And he'll be blocking for whoever their, quarterback. He'll be protecting, whoever their quarterback is this year. 6'6", and he's a 330, 1-pound monster, and he's just, he'll definitely be a top 5 pick, in the NFL draft. I think he's just that good. So,
what are your thoughts about Oregon? I mean, are they a Pac-12 competitor for the title? I mean, is this a team that can rebound after the loss of Herbert?
Yeah, man. With that, I think it's all about who their quarterback is. I think they're supremely talented, man. I think they're probably the most talented team in the Pac-12 by far. Their recruiting class. I'm not 100% sure what their ranking was, but I know they got some talented freshmen. I know they have a talented defensive end in Kayvon Thibodeau. They have freshmen like Noah Sewell coming in. And, I really think that, they're going to be a very difficult team to beat this year, especially in the Pac-12, man. And, the Pac-12 isn't always the strongest conference, So, I think Oregon will definitely, stay at the top of that conference.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It's going to be hard to replace a guy like Herbert, but they've got a lot of key players around there that can make up for that lost talent. I would say on the other end of the Pac-12, I have Davis Mills, quarterback from Stanford, coming out of nowhere. Like I said, with Herbert's departure, you kind of look at the Pac-12 and maybe you see Slavis make a run in the USC. But Stanford has played good ball in the past. I think it's time for them to make that rebound and get back into the championship game. Davis Mills is a newcomer. He played 6 games last year, throwing for almost 2,000 yards at right around 1,900 yards and 11 touchdowns. This is a team that I believe could truly compete with USC or Oregon if that were the case. Now, also this week, we've heard of the Big Ten going to in-conference play as well. So who do you see taking that next step for the Big Ten this year?
Man, I think that, with the Big Ten, you usually think of one team, and that's Ohio State, man. It's really tough to think about the Big Ten without thinking about Ohio State. They're always at the top of that conference. And so I think, the MVP of that conference is hands down going to be Justin Fields, man, just because I think he'll also be top 5, top 10 NFL draft pick. With his talent, his ability to run the football and also throw the football. That dual threat presence. I think. I just think he's way too talented. On the best team in that conference. As the quarterback, I just think that Justin Fields will definitely take reins of that conference. So.
Yeah, and I mean following up from this past season where he lost in a close one against Clemson, Many say that after that controversial hit against Trevor Lawrence, that Ohio State would have been sitting in the national championship game. So it'll be very interesting to see how that team recovers from that devastating loss in the playoff. My MVP of the league is going to be Rondale Moore from Purdue. This is a team that wasn't very flashy last year. I think they finished off 4-8. And also, Rondale Moore is the first freshman in the Big Ten history to become a consensus All-American 2 years ago. Followed up this past year, he played in 2 games before injuring his hamstring. And in those 2 games, he had 344 yards receiving, which is pretty dang good. You can only imagine what he would have done if he had been able to play the rest of the season. But this is a guy that comes out his junior year and really could make a push. This is a guy that probably could be one of the leading wide receivers, not only in the Big Ten, but I truly believe in all of all in college football.
Agreed.
His speed and agility is like no one I've seen before. I guess the best I could compare it to would be Mecole Hardman. He's just super quick. So I think he could make a big jump this year. So be looking for him for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with that, man.
Speaking of big, we head to the Big 12, where last year we watched Jalen Hurts kind of dominate with Oklahoma after he transferred from Alabama. However, he's left now, and some of the few teams that we'll probably discuss in the future, obviously Texas and Oklahoma, but there's a few other teams out there making a push in the Big 12. Who do you see leading the conference this year to be the most valuable player?
I think that I think I'm gonna go with Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State, man. That guy. You could go with some other guys, some quarterbacks, in that conference. You always have an Oklahoma quarterback that goes for crazy stats in that conference, But I think Chuba Hubbard, who, ran for 2,000, he was a 2,000-yard rusher last year. He led the country in rushing yards. And, he's just, he's a phenomenal running back, with a lot of speed. And, I just think that, I think that he'll be the MVP of that conference. Like I said, you can easily go with a quarterback, but I think that, that guy is a phenomenal talent. So I'm going Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I think, Oklahoma State, I believe, beat Texas this past year. This is a team that's been in the running for the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years. On and off, obviously. They've never been able to really get over that hump. Another team that's really not been able to get over that hump is Texas. This is a team that went 10-3 2 years ago under Sam Ehlinger, who I've chosen as my Big 12 MVP. This guy, although the record didn't show this past year, I think they went 7-5, very mediocre. I also talked about in my previous video about Tom Herman being on the hot seat, but Sam Ehlinger is one of those quarterbacks that can come in and get the job done. He can beat you with both his legs and his arm strength. He reminds me a lot of Tim Tebow, honestly, in the style of play and his physicality. I think if there is a Heisman Trophy this year, this is a guy that could be in the running. I truly believe this guy could be a top 5 player in all of college football. Last year, like I said, even though the record didn't show, he managed to throw for 3,500 yards and led the conference with 32 touchdowns, which was better than Jalen Hurts. Yes, they had a mediocre season last year, but with the recruiting of Tom Herman, under Tom Herman, this is a team that could really make some noise this year. And then the next conference is obviously one that's been talked about many times in the past couple years, that being the ACC conference. Clemson most recently lost in the national championship to LSU against Joe Burrow, who was basically unstoppable. Obviously Clemson looks to bounce back. Who do you have as the most valuable player in the ACC?
I have none other than probably the best quarterback, I think, in the nation. And I think that he'll be the number one quarterback off the board. I think he'll be either the top pick in NFL draft, or he might be maybe the second pick. Depends on who is drafted in the NFL. But definitely Trevor Lawrence, man. Trevor Lawrence is phenomenal. I don't even think I have to read out the guy's stats. I think everybody knows who Trevor Lawrence is if you know anything about college football. And he's had his team in the college football playoff the last 2 years, and he's bound to be like I said, a top pick. And Pro Football Focus had him as the number one returning quarterback, and I think it's just really difficult to go with somebody else in that conference as the MVP.
I think most would agree that Trevor Lawrence is not only probably the best quarterback in college football, he's one of the best to ever live. Having said that, I chose someone a little bit different. I went with his teammate, Travis Etienne, running back from Clemson. I think this guy has flown so much under the radar. In fact, so much that I thought he actually went to the NFL this past year. But apparently not. No, this is a guy that has been a reigning 2-time ACC Player of the Year over his teammate Trevor Lawrence. And to me, this guy is the reason why Trevor Lawrence has so much success. When you have to stack 7 or 8 guys in the box to stop Etienne, it really opens up the play action to let Trevor Lawrence do as he pleases. It opens up the screen game. It opens up play action. You can do everything when you have a dynamic running back like Travis Etienne. There's so much you can talk about him. He's reached 1,500 yards in multiple seasons. The only ACC player, the only player at Clemson to reach 1,500 yards more than once. Wow. And he leads the ACC in career touchdowns with 60 touchdowns, 56 of those being rushing touchdowns. This guy is probably the most underrated running back in college football. I mean, maybe not mostly underrated, but definitely overlooked. This guy could definitely be a first or second rounder in the draft this next year. With that being said, we go to one of the most notable and recognizable conferences in all of college football, that is the SEC Conference. The defending national championships as well at LSU under Joe Burrow and Ed Orgeron. With the departure of Joe Burrow, though, and also a lot of other elite players, including guys like Jake Fromm, DeAndre Swift, and not to mention many others, who steps in? Who's up next in the SEC? Who's that next guy that takes the jump?
Man, I'm gonna go with Jamie Newman because a lot of people might say, you shouldn't go with a transfer quarterback. A lot of stuff's going on, but the dude has shown, he's shown that he's a talented quarterback who can not only use his legs, but, can also thread the needle. On Pro Football Focus's, tight window passing statistic, he was second to, Joe Burrow. And so, they said that the third guy was, very far behind. And so, when you add in the ability to run the football, out the pocket, and also to stand in the pocket and to, deliver tight window passes, you have a great, college quarterback. And so, along with that, and with Georgia getting this new offensive coordinator, I really think that he can take that offense to the next level. They already have, Georgia already has a good offensive line. I know they have some tackles that are graduating, but they're always recruiting offensive linemen. Sam Pittman did a great job with that, and Matt Luke taking over that now. They've always done a good job recruiting offensive linemen, and so I think Jamie Newman, is going to be able to throw the ball to some, pretty good weapons out there. And, I'm excited to see, how that goes with the transfer quarterback in Jamie Newman.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great pick. You look at teams like Florida and Georgia, and possibly even a Tennessee that could compete for the SEC East. They're stacked on all sides this year.
Agreed.
I think the MVP of the league is actually going to be Jamie Newman's new teammate, George Pickens. This kid could have been an All-American as a freshman. In fact, with Fromm throwing over 60%, I believe this guy could be the guy to thank. With a 6'3" frame, he's got the physicality to outmuscle any defender on any defense in the SEC, which is pretty impressive. Most would have thought Pickens was a senior based on his performance throughout the season. Although, his freshman side showed during the last game of the season when he got into a fist fight with the Georgia Tech player, which resulted in his suspension in the first half of the SEC championship. But other than that, this guy has proven time and time again that he is an All-American talent. I think you could be looking at a 1,000-yard receiving receiver. This guy is probably one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in the SEC, other than probably Jamar Chase from LSU, who comes back for another year. So, I think, like I said, with that being said, some of the top teams will be Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and even a Florida under Trask. I really appreciate you joining the show today, D. It's been a blast, my first ever co-host. And when we come back next week, we're going to discuss the top defensive players in every single conference for next year. So with that being said, continue to stay safe, and we'll see you next time. This is Nate Dogg signing off.